not a thought of giving in. Welcome to the shrimp tank. Want to put it all together, this is big thanks. Doing big things, chasing big dreams. Yeah, it's all real, this life's all that it seems. All the chicks scream, all the dudes yell. This is just what I do and I do it well. With the flow fresher than the new shoe smell. Going through hell, well homie keep going. You know the saying, you gon' reap what you sow in. So I don't chase girls, I just chase dreams. Play the same game, but we ain't in the same league. Running a campaign, Roadie 2016. Like a phone to die, putting me in charge. I'm a general, from the front I'ma lead the charge. Like a federal, fell on my lap never. Going hard as ever, the results match the effort.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Oz Digital Studio, where we film the Boca Raton Shrimp Tank in collaboration with the FAU Adams Center for Entrepreneurship. If this is your first time tuning in, you can check out all our episodes up on Spotify, iHeartRadio, or iTunes, or wherever you catch your podcast these days. And of course, at Shrimp Tank Boca, Facebook Live every week, 4 p.m. on Thursdays. We come to you with the best and brightest entrepreneurs from South Florida. And we're excited today because we got the Inc. number 74 national company on the Shrimp Tank today. So we're going to pick his brain all about his company, Taxfyle, in a moment. Today we got Kevin Cox. It's my co-host today. Kevin, what is going on at FAU?
Oh, it's a big week this week. I've been talking about it for a couple months. The National Science Foundation's I-Core program finally kicks off tomorrow. Glad that some of you heard me talk about it on the show and have applied with your cool technology and your inventions and your innovations spinning out of labs and universities. And now we give you a few $1,000s to investigate whether or not these technologies are actually commercializable. Some will be, inevitably, some will not be. So it's a really fantastic program. It'll keep me busy for the next 3 weeks, keeping an eye on all these would-be entrepreneurs, doing customer development interviews, and trying to figure out if they've got a customer out there and who that customer is. Should be fun.
Tell me a little bit about your platform you just created. I heard it's doing really well. Right before this episode, you were telling me about it.
Oh, yeah, it's really taken off. Seedocracy.com. So we're actually going to launch some public competitions. We've never done that before. We've only done internal competitions at FAU and some other universities you'd know the name of. You can see it all on the platform. But impending in 2 weeks from now, any entrepreneur out there can jump on the platform, create a video pitch, and compete for votes. You get the most votes, you get all the money. Pretty simple.
That is awesome. Love the video component of it, right? That you could just put a video up there. People could vote and take their time looking at all the different videos up on your platform. That's pretty cool. Because too often you got to, go on a Zoom meeting specifically at 5 p.m. on a Thursday, and no one wants to deal with, setting their schedule up 2 weeks in advance for certain things like that. So I really love that people just go on that platform and participate. Well, let's get into our guests today. Today, we have Ricky Lavina. He's the co-founder of Taxfyle right down here in South Florida. So, Ricky, tell us a little bit about Taxfyle. How many people are partnered with you? How did the business get started and where it is today?
Thanks for having me. Taxfyle, easily summed up, is Uber for accountancy. It's another marketplace, as we discussed at the beginning of the show. But we've been at it for 6 years now. We have some nice viability. It's a pretty interesting intersection, right, of kind of a professional workforce, right, meets on-demand platform. And basically we serve the end user. You could download the Taxfyle app on the App Store, Google Play Store, answer a few questions, get an upfront price quote to see how much it'll be to file your small business tax or your personal tax return. And then we also do onshoring for larger CPA firms or small CPA firms. If you're just a CPA firm looking to offload some compliance work, we put the workforce to use there as well. So all our CPAs, we have the world's largest gig economy of CPAs. Our base here in the United States is about 3,000 strong, 3,300 as of right now. And they like it.
Cool.
They get to be an entrepreneur without having to take the full plunge and leaving their day jobs, right? And over the years, we've seen that this actually becomes like their main job, right?
Okay, so let's break it down as for an example. I'm a business owner myself. I run Client Focus Advisors, the Shrimp Tank. I have multiple LLCs. I come to your platform. Explain what happens next.
So you could either log in via your laptop, right? Online, Chrome or Safari, whatever browser you use, or you could download the app like I mentioned, And then the algorithm selects some questions. So, what are you here for? I'm here for catch-up bookkeeping, or for, in your case, tax returns, right? With some entities and maybe a personal tax return, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, okay, great. The algorithm will pick and choose some questions. We're not going to keep you on a screen for hours. It's usually 3-4 minute process to do a business return and a personal return, similar to kind of like adding to your cart on Amazon.
Cool.
And then at the end of it, one thing I didn't like in the CPA profession, I'm a CPA. I worked at PwC. Ironically, they're our largest customer now. But I didn't like the ambiguity and kind of like the uncertainty of these engagement letters that, hey, this is my hourly rate. Well, how many hours is it going to take, right? Well, it depends, right? So we came up with some algorithms that we won't bore you, but basically you answer those questions and you get a fixed quote. So it's going to be, $100 for the 1040. It's going to be $400 for all, the business returns, right? You add your credit card to it. And then, within usually 90 seconds or so, you get connected with a CPA. And it's not just any CPA on the platform. It's one that's matched for your tax needs. So someone that knows, given the questions that you answered on your business or in your personal return.
So how are these CPAs vetted? Are they, and do the users leave reviews after the
Yeah, absolutely. So, so there's detective controls, like you mentioned at the end of it.
Okay.
Right? It's like, hey, how's my experience? 1 to 4-star. And obviously that feeds the algorithm in terms of how much jobs someone could pick up and the complexity of that job, right?
Okay.
Usually, though, what we've seen over the past 6 years, now we have a nice kind of data set, is that we're killing a mosquito with a cannon. The average years of experience on the platform is 10 years, right? And if you're just doing your simple 1040, that really hasn't changed that much, except for maybe a couple line items, right? It's going to be done well. Our net promoter scores, for those that aren't familiar with, that's NPS, right? So that kind of gauges how viral people are to a customer to say, hey, use Taxfyle. In the future, to someone that's unaware of the brand, is like in the 60s. So,
wow.
And especially for a negatively connotative platform product, right? Taxes, right? We're telling half of the people that file with us that you owe money and you're not going to get anything in return, right? Here's a bill, right? And then you leave it up to them and say, well, this is ridiculous, I don't owe that much. It's like, well, you do. And it's like, well, I want to take this as a deduction. Well, you can't. That's illegal.
and why are people leaving their accountants to go onto your platform? Is it just the ease that you guys are making it smoother? Is it the actual cost compared to the traditional accountant?
I don't know if it's so much that they're leaving an account.
Okay.
As we discussed before we got on, the podcast here. We're not bringing over 60-year-olds that have had the same account for 15 years, right? It's entrepreneurs, small business owners, or people that just haven't had a consistent relationship for a decade or so with a CPA and are looking for, first of all, to do it digitally, right? They're comfortable, they're not going to walk into an HR block or something like that.
Is that also because there's not many tax professionals entering the industry right now? I'm in the financial service business. There's like 1% under age 30, like 5% under age 40. And I know CPAs kind of run similar numbers. So I'm assuming these young entrepreneurs don't really fit well with these, 50, 60, 70-year-old CPAs. Like you're talking about that you can't even send an email or like a PDF. It's like drop off the taxes in an envelope type. I had to fire my first CPA because of that. It was just like too old school, and I had to go to a younger CPA that was more on my level when it came to technology.
It's kind of weird in the accounting industry. It's the last market to move in terms of innovation.
Yeah,
out of all the markets out there, and it's like pulling teeth. Like he could be like, hey, CPA firm, I will save you 50% in your cost of revenues. Just send all your work, and they'll be like, I'll send you 5 returns. Like, okay, it's very strange. It's very slow to move in terms of innovation. It's a risk averse industry, right? The incentive structure is perverse, right? Because you get dinged for mistakes. You don't really get rewards for growth, so it's really risk averse. You don't have sales departments in the CPA firms. You have a partner, right? You have staff, right? It's compliance work. It's a fiduciary duty, and it's different than wealth management as well, because in wealth management there's a commission. There's fees. You can't have any commissions in this industry, right? So it's ultimately perverse in terms of the growth strategy there, right? Where it's about you grow because you made the less amount of mistakes and took the least amount of risk type of thing. But there's a lot to unpackage there. There's definitely a shortage of CPAs. I'm constantly going to FIU, and talking and saying, hey, to the accounting schools, like, there's another way to work here. Get your CPA license, and you don't have to risk everything and take an SBA loan and lean all your assets, to start a business from scratch, right? You just start on Taxfyle. You can make $100,000 and we'll feed you all the clients, right? And you don't have anyone to report to as long as your work's up to quality, right? There is that dynamic going on right now in the industry with supply.
Kevin, do you see a lot of students that are going through FAU that want to become CPAs now, or are you seeing the numbers drop as well?
Well, I wouldn't be able to really tell. Not a lot of accounting majors come through the electives that I teach, which, as you know, are all entrepreneurs and stuff. But I absolutely love the sound of this, working with so many entrepreneurs. I also appreciate that you have a desktop version for old people like me.
Usually it's done on desktop because when people associate, we launched with an app.
Yeah.
So quick story. When we launched in 2016, we were like best new app in the App Store, number one tax time app for 3 years, right? We got all these accolades, but we didn't have a desktop version.
Yeah.
And because we came out of saying, hey, we want to be innovative, but it was just way too, like, even people that are using Ubers to commute daily, they still want to get their taxes done on their desktop. So it's not really like old school. It's just that's the industry. Like they associate taxes with what they have on their laptop.
Yeah, well, I'm old school when it comes to that. Some tech I'm fine with, but all these apps and them getting all my data and everything so small on the phone. Like, I just like an old school big screen where I can, have too many windows open at the same time and way too many tabs and just do how I do it. I just came back from a trip and going to some shows and some hotels, and it's like, well, for these tickets you need this app, for this thing you need this app, for this thing I think I have 12 new apps on my phone just trying to do what I was trying to do, and it's like, it can get old, but this sounds great for entrepreneurs. The ones I work with are notorious for kind of not doing a good job at accounting, particularly when they start making money, because I work with the really early stage ventures. A lot of them are just typically spending money, sometimes lots of it, and they have a track record of really keeping track of that. Like, man, how much money are we losing here? How deep is this hole? And when they start generating revenue, I don't know if it's just because it's so exciting or it's just such a long time coming, they sort of forget that, like, okay, let's do detailed accounting and bookkeeping. And then they're just like, but we're making money. Can you believe it? And it's like, how much did you make? And they're like, I don't know, a few thousand. It's like, you should know these numbers to the penny. Like, what's going on here? And I see it all the time. So something like that's available at any time. If they had a month or a quarter where they didn't really do the bookkeeping they needed to, and they can just jump on there and find somebody and button everything up for the next year. And as everybody should know who's listening, like, the better job you do, the less, whether you're, even a tax file, when you know your bill, the more organized and the better you are, typically the lower it's going to be. Because if they've got to go and collect and spend hours, they got a bill for that.
Go back to previous
keep
years.
it buttoned up. Yeah.
Tell us the early days. Like, why did you start this company? How is it building out an app? I mean, that is extremely difficult and very expensive. You could have the right developers at one point, then you got to sign up new developers. Kind of explain those early days.
Yeah, well, I think as I was telling Kevin, I thought it was going to be a part-time gig, and then things came to head with my two other co-founders. Mike and Will were basically like, we need you here full time. And I was at PwC. And then the decision was made, well, how viable is a business plan, right? What's the competition like? What's our realistic shot for raising money? What's a realistic shot for legitimate product market fit? Is this thing going to get bought out at seed? Is it something that we want to do to IPO? And it started with an honest conversation around what the competitive landscape is and what the viability of the product is. Are we way too early? Are we 5 years early? Are we 2 years early, right, to market? Because you could have an amazing product, but be too early to market and fail. So, when we launched, I think I was already full-time. I was full-time in 2016. And, that's all we needed, which was the best new app. Basically, it was just out of the blue, a few Apple engineers used it because they didn't want to go down the street to an H&R Block, and they had some complexities on the Schedule Ds in terms of trading and things like that. And it was at the time H&R Block and TurboTax didn't really have an assisted solution on the App Store, so we were like the only one. And that's how they found it, they loved it, and then we got the editorial pick there. And with that, in South Florida, in 2016, was able to give some clout to the
Now,
race
did
for
you
Angels.
bootstrap that first year, 2016, or did you guys have capital at that point?
Family and friends. So we raised some family and friends, and then soon after that, and with the traction that we got from that year, that was a wild time. That was our first main inflection point in terms of deciding whether we should move out to Palo Alto or keep the business in Miami. Because then we're getting calls for seed investments. Andreessen Horowitz, Google Ventures, Sequoia, but they all come with caveats. You got to move over there. You're like seed stage. It's not.
But you made the right decision. Now that we know when COVID hit, right?
Well,
no one out there would have been a tough year.
Yeah, I wish I would have said, "Oh, there's going to be a global pandemic, and therefore all these guys are going to move over." And but we saw it from a practical standpoint. I think it was a moment that we were looking at properties in Palo Alto, and we're like, all right, well, what are we raising? $1 million. Okay, fine. Nothing too crazy in the startup world. But how long is that $1 million going to last? In terms of the burn, and when you're the main employees here, right? And I was already working at PwC for quite a few years, and my wife's a nurse practitioner, and and my co-founders have their families, right? There's overhead there that we have to kind of like take care of if we wanted to be able to survive and build the app itself.
Yeah, California is just brutal. I looked at some universities when I was on the job market out that way, and professors do okay, but it's kind of middling, and I looked there and I was thinking, great climate, this could work out well. And then I started looking at property values, and then that 13% state income tax right off the top. It was like, oh, I can't live there. Oh, okay. Like, I literally can't afford to live there. It might be nice, but no. So it's
you get hammered with the state tax. You get hammered, just kind of like groceries are just more expensive, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of like the sales tax up the supply chain, right? Add to the ultimate cost of goods that end up at your door, and then the Palo property was like this is probably $3 million now, but in 2016 was $1.2 million. 2-bedroom, no garage. You got to park on the street every day. The Google bus will pick you up. and I might have to move it. I couldn't afford that on my own, so I have to move it with one of my co-founders. Try pitching that to your wife. That's where your business meets home. And yeah, that was a no-go. And then when you look at the burn, so I'm like, okay, well, I would do this if it was the best interest of the business, right? Absolutely. So obviously, a fiduciary duty to at that point, the only investors that we had were friends and family. It's like, okay, well, if GV or Andreessen or someone like that, right? If they would provide like the infrastructure and all this stuff, and it basically was like, okay, well, at the end of the day, there is some value they bring, and none more than the name being on the cap table, which is very important, in subsequent rounds, right? But we were willing to trade that off for saying, okay, let's just raise the money in Miami and add 8 months, 9 months to our burn. Because our product is pretty seasonal. We want to make money, during tax. Well, now we make money year round, but back then when we're just doing, 1040s and small business returns, it's January to April, right? So you got to cash flow and grow, and we said, okay, well, the trade off here isn't worth it. So we kind of stepped away from that whole pitch and brought it back down here to South Florida to raise the seed round.
Awesome. We're going to take a quick commercial break to hear from one of our sponsors. When we get back, we're going to jump to our hot or not segment of the show.
Businesses looking to enhance technology strategies, integrate system data, or develop mobile apps or digital platforms should consider Oz. Oz's services and solutions range from automation and machine learning to creating COVID-free biospheres with a mobile solution. With more than 22 years of experience, Oz's cutting-edge technologies and adaptability allow their consultants to lead businesses into their digital futures. To learn more about their latest solutions, Salus and Rainmaker, please visit followoz.com. That's FOLLOWOZ.com.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Shrimp Tank. As a reminder, you catch all our episodes on our website, shrimptankpodcast.com, as well all of our feeds at Shrimp Tank Boca on Instagram, Facebook Live every single Thursday at 4 p.m. And of course, connect to our guests over on LinkedIn. A lot of them are on there, and they have always told us that they will reach out to any of our audience and even take on some meetings and discuss what's on your mind. So, Ricky, on this segment of the show, it's called Hot or Not. Jump into a topic and explain why you believe it is hot or not. So you talked earlier about, building a CPA network. So I want to know, was it hot or not that first 2 years as you built that? Did it go as expected, for example, or no? Was it actually not hot at all?
Yes, I think I definitely think it was hot. So the first 2 years, we were the first gig economy, and there was other marketplaces out there like Thumbtack where you could get like CPAs, right? But nothing really like in a memorialized structure where you could just offload 1,000 tax returns, at a click of a button to get it done. And the industry was and still is kind of moving away from offshore work like India and stuff like that for regulatory reasons. And not to get into the specifics, but. There's only a certain type of work that you could do overseas, right?
Sure.
But over the past 5 years, there's kind of been this price crunch on the P&L side, meaning tax work is getting done cheaper and cheaper every year, right? And it's only so much overhead that one could take, from a staffing perspective if you're a CPA firm, right? So they were looking for other solutions.
Okay.
And some of them were like, all right, this may be crazy, but we're going to go with you, right? And then it starts to snowball, kind of from there. Yeah, I definitely think it's this type of marketplace is going to be essential.
Was it very costly in the beginning just to get the word out there? When you're trying to reach out to CPAs, I could just sense them just hanging up on you, like, no, not interested. Or you're emailing them, they're ignoring you. Like how, and it snowballed once you got some, but in those early days, tell us that process, what you went through to even get them. Get the first 20, for example. Yeah,
just like raising money, friends and family. So you got to go with your connections.
Okay.
It's an enterprise sale. You got to treat it like that. It's got to come from the CEO. You got to put your name behind it. You gotta sleep in that office, and it has to be a warm connection that you've known for a while, right? And prove everything about it, and then it's got to go well.
Of course.
Then it's got to go well. It's not. Day one's not outbound cold calling. Day one is getting a couple flagships on board and then building the confidence of the product.
Sure.
Within those. So similar to that friends and family round.
Cool.
I've got one for you. It goes right back to what we were talking about previously. So it's got a bad reputation for being really hard to do, more so up here than in Miami, but raising money in Florida or South Florida, hot or not?
Depends on the stage.
All right, tell us more.
Yeah, so I think like right now or back when I was raising.
Right now, and what do you mean by based on the stage?
Yeah, right now
sounds like a good story.
Yeah, I think it's hot now. If you're seed,
okay,
even maybe there's more intros right now via South Florida individuals to funds that if they're not here, they have a connection with either as an LP or something in New York or in Austin or in California. A couple European, you don't see much, but usually those three. Still, we kind of got ways to go from like a growth round stage. This is like later round, B, C, D, right? I would really like to see some of these big names that have come down here, write some checks and get on some cap tables.
Yeah,
I think it's just been a lot of marketing to date. I'll leave it at that. I just think it's been a lot of marketing to date, and I would really like to see one of these guys write a nice large check to a growth stage company.
Well, don't worry, it's definitely coming because I saw on Twitter Miami's the new Silicon Valley, so that means
it's on Twitter. It's real.
Yeah.
It's got to start somewhere, right? And the proof's going to be in the pudding, And honestly, I'm bullish that hopefully it's us. We're at a really pivotal point right now. We're taking off in this next phase of the company, true growth stage company, making legitimate inroads in the market, bringing in legitimate revenue, bringing in legitimate jobs, and it's going to take someone like that. It doesn't have to be us, but someone like that to hit higher valuations, and eventually IPO or exit to then.
Yeah, so let me ask you one follow-up question on that then. One thing we all know that investors love, they love, but it doesn't sound like you've implemented yet, although you may have, you'll have to tell me, and it's that ever sexy recurring revenue. It sounds like on Taxfyle I can kind of pop on, get all my services done, and then maybe kind of get off. Are you going to build in a recurring revenue model for the greedy VCs so that way you can charge me every single month?
I had to sell out. Majority of our income's recurring revenue. So ARR is really big, and there's no way around that. It doesn't need to be necessarily like in SaaS, right? So the majority of investors out there, you're going to be like upfront with them. Don't waste your time due diligence. If you're not SaaS, you're not SaaS, right? If you have recurring, like on an annual contract that renews, right, at a fixed price, and there's a penalty if they were to leave, right? You're casting a wide net, not as wide as if you would have, a SaaS product. Definitely, it's like 50-50 out there. I would think, the Bain Capitals of the world or whatever. They're having SaaS, and that's a checkbox for them and for their LPs, right? Because remember, they set out a strategy, and that strategy, includes hedging the risk on an early stage company because it's recurring, and therefore they could, hang their hat that this amount of revenue is good.
Yeah.
And they promise that to their LPs. That's what they're going to look for. So, I have run into some that do focus solely on B2C, right? But you got to hit some legitimate user counts, in order to play in that ball game. Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, I'll piggyback that because we're talking about recurring revenue. I mean, all these apps are adding other features, and in yours, it seems pretty obvious. Wealth management, life insurance, all of a sudden home and auto. Right? Everyone asks their accountant all the time, "Hey, do you have a referral for X, Y, or Z?" And a lot of accountants have kind of got into the insurance world or financial services, and that is recurring revenue, right? So hot or not, going down that channel.
Not so. So we feel like there's this point where you hit where it becomes focus versus am I praying and spraying, or do I have to continue to focus, right? And we augment the tax services with some catch up bookkeeping. Like I said, there's some wealth management there, but that's mainly ancillary to the main product and to the main marketing, right? Some of these other product lines, like if you really want to go in and you're saying, I want to do standalone, insurance services, or whatever, you got to go in, head first. And they got to stand on their
industry
own.
out there.
Yeah,
there's a million insurance websites out there.
There's a cost structure behind it.
Life insurance brands, absolutely.
There's a cost structure behind it. You got to market it. You have to create a department behind it. And then you have to build and manage the workforce. So I'll say right now we're just kind of focused on taxes and accounting.
Kevin, you're smiling down there. What's going through your mind?
You and your hey, have you ever thought about adding all these other crazy things and having a totally different business model? It's a good question.
I would disagree on that because a lot of CPAs are trying to find ways to make revenue, and they're all becoming financial advisors. And it's easy. They see the tax return. They automatically, could save them money if they put them into a different investment account. And also clients themselves are asking CPAs all the time, like, hey, should I open up an IRA, or to get additional? What is CPAs telling them?
Sense.
Or
that's something that I've even, talked about with different various people is, because accounting, it's kind of backward looking, and then finance is very much forward looking. Like you'd probably want someone at that interface that has some understanding of both. They can't just say like, here's what you did, here's what you owe, but also you might do this next year and change these things and do that. So, I mean, they are by definition interrelated for sure.
And they see the statement. So what's really cool is like a statement come, there's $1 million account that says house account on the statement, and all of a sudden it's a layup, right? So
we'll add you to the platform.
Exactly.
We'll add you to the platform. Where the rubber meets the road, though, is kind of like, if you're you could do that, if you have some legit revenue flowing through, but you're looking at 15-month burns, right? So honestly, you'll get a lot of passes if you're not focused.
Yep.
If you do too much, you're just good. Because these guys, they're looking at thousands of decks, tens of thousands of decks, depending on the size of the fund a year, and that's a red flag.
Sure.
Even if you're making a lot of money, I have had great traction. I've been really capital efficient. You'll still get no's if it comes off, if they get a whiff that you're not focused on what has got you to that stage too early.
Okay, last question for the Hot or Not segment. When it comes to app development, has it been hot or not from your experience?
App development.
Just in general, have you had a good experience? You never built an app before in 2016. You went, to
Awesome.
hire a team. Did you outsource that team? Did you hire engineers internally, do it yourself? Where are you at today? I guess kind of give us a little bit more info, because so many people want to build apps, and it's extremely difficult, of course, to get it to work without bugs.
Yeah, I think it depends on what you want to do with your app, right? And
Okay.
what the functionality your app needs to do, right?
Yep.
We're big into build versus buy. We buy as much as we can, but not at the risk of the business plan.
Okay.
So if we needed 90-second connections and basically have the marketplace work truly on demand, calculate pricing, have a dynamic routing system, an algorithm that could, assess the complexity of someone's tax situation, right? We reach out to Twilio back in the day and try to get a partnership with them, where they do cool stuff and they have really good engineers, right? And we took a V1 of our platform that didn't have any of these APIs, right? And said, hey, would you build it out for us? And they're like, no, that's too much. And we're not going to take on this project. And we're like, oh, well, we got to build it, right? So we're constantly weighing build versus buy. And, the founding team has a CTO in it, Will, right? So naturally we started building the app in-house, but at every turn we always go to see someone out there doing this, specializing in this, like video chat. You don't have to build that from the ground up. There's tons of things on GitHub, and libraries out there that you could at least, get a head start on.
Cool. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break to hear from one of our sponsors. We get back and jump into our future focus segment.
Look, who's kidding who? Hiring sucks. Everybody knows it. It's brutal. It's difficult. How do you find that right person? What can you do to broaden your search without spending a fortune? Even if you're, a state or city official, how do you get people hired in your geographic region? COVID comes and job fairs die. It's really tough out there. But luckily, we have a solution here at Premier Virtual. Premier Virtual is your one-stop shop for all things hiring. Have a virtual trade show. Expand your geographic area that you can recruit from exponentially. Find the absolute best employee for the job. Go to premiervirtual.com and check them out.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Shrimp Tank. So, Ricky, on this segment, I'm going to jump into your hiring issues. So, what has been the best thing you've done to get to, you mentioned you had between 50 and 100 employees. So what are your tricks? How do you guys hire?
Word of mouth.
Word of mouth ends once you get over 50, though. I mean, how many people approximately are with the company?
Yeah, 50 right now. The best hires we make, it depends on what you're hiring for. Right. If you're looking for kind of these more experienced positions, whether it's in engineering or sales, ops, customer success, resumes are nice and logos are good, but when you're still early stage, you want to have someone that you could trust and that's dependable. And what we have figured out over the years is that if you have someone that's already working for you that's dependable, right, as good character, then they probably assimilate with people with good character and they're dependable. So we always go internally first. We pay a recruiting bonus to our employees that bring someone on board that we end up hiring, right, and we incentivize that first. So that's always first. Then we hired a in-house kind of recruiter to be an extension of that. We've done, obviously, we've used external recruiters. To less success, we've had some successful hires, right? Not at the clip that I would be happy at, but eventually, like you said, you get to a certain scale that you have to use kind of every weapon in your arsenal.
Yeah. Do you use the typical ones like Indeed, for example, LinkedIn? Is that kind of your typical approaches? Or?
No, not for HQ pros. We use Indeed and LinkedIn to build the marketplace, right?
Okay.
So independent contractors, right? So again,
Yeah, that makes
at
sense.
scale, right? Mm-hmm. So at scale, right? And these guys are going to be independent contractors, and then once we get the application in the door, there's vetting that goes on, additional vetting. So, I would say word of mouth, in-house, HR.
Well, give us examples of what things have been difficult when it comes to hiring. You have people that start one day and 3 weeks later they're gone. You have some people that just don't show up the first day. I mean, tell us some, the serious stuff that's happened in the last 5-6 years.
Well, if you guys figure out the secret to that, let me know. I think we've had it better than most, but at the same time, it's difficult nut to crack, right? I think it starts with character. To be honest, there's people without college degrees in the engineering department that have been, our top performers and have outperformed people that have come over from like Amazon or Ivy League, and we've hired all those people and thrown tons of money their way, and they don't, they really don't live up to it. So you have to go well beyond the resume and availability. And I think at the end of the day, it's like character. I wasn't sure how I felt about that and team dynamics in the early days, of the startup. But now where, that's become pretty relevant and prevalent, in terms of, it's top of our mind. Are we hiring someone with character? Is this person trustworthy? Do they have talent? Right. And then everything else comes after that.
So you were at a really key kind of stage. I guess you're actually a little bit moving beyond it, I'd say. Hopefully you've already established it, but early on, typically, is when you establish that company culture, right? And the norms and all the things that go along with that. So have you allowed people to work remote pre-COVID? Are you kind of in person? Has that changed at all? Where are you on kind of remote working? And I know like Premier Virtual, as we just mentioned, they're early, very early, and he likes to have people in the office and really create that culture before they start kind of rapid growth, which happened a little early when COVID hit, having a platform like that. But what's your take on that?
When COVID hit, we were around 40. This year we're hiring up to, I think, 100. So when we went completely virtual, again, it goes back to character and trust. I know that sounds silly and cliche, but it's really not. I really mean this. There was a company culture. There is a company culture, right? But at the end of the day, it's a sum of the parts, and each one of the part is someone, with integrity that could go through a list and could perform whether someone's watching over their shoulder or not, right? Because at the end of the day, what we say is you're held accountable. Your work, we're going to hold you accountable to the work that you perform, right? So, so if it's good, and it's got to stand alone, right? Yeah. And some departments are easier than others, right? Engineering, right? Sales, those are easy to quantify, right? Now, customer success, there's less. It's a longer kind of feedback cycle there, right?
Of course. Sometimes you give people an inch, they take a mile, and we saw that with COVID-19. Everyone worked from home, and all of a sudden they weren't, doing, everything they should be doing. They're doing side gigs on TikTok and Instagram while they're supposed to be working on a certain project. So we see that all the time, and it's always a consistent issue here on the Shrimp Tank is getting, good folks that want to be part of the culture. So even though you're saying that, the character of the people, it's usually, we hear that all the time here. Those are the businesses that end up
and that's why I would say that, honestly, we didn't really see that. Like, we encourage people to have side gigs. If you want to get on, a blockchain project on GitHub, we encourage that from our engineering department for sure. We don't want you just working on our stack. Luckily, everyone now is we didn't mandate everyone to be back in the office at all. It comes down to that performance, and that's what holds everyone accountable. But we have to stagger people into the office now because they naturally just want to come back. Because what you lose, you mentioned the culture, but also problem solving. There's certain problems that are easily and more efficiently solved in person if you got a whiteboard around it. If you're at the beginning of, like, let's say a sprint or something. You know, so
Absolutely.
yeah, so that's why we see people coming back. The nature of the job is bringing people back, right? The nature of the problems that they got to solve in each department is bringing people back to work together, and then they oscillates. You know, then they'll go out and handle task lists.
And you have a cool office. I've seen some photos online.
Thank
So,
you.
like,
Yeah.
what do you guys do to make it fun, right? I mean, people want to get in there. I've seen some photos. I'm like, I want to visit that office. I'm like, it looks
on
like there's a
down.
lot of action over there. Like, what are you guys doing? Just keep it interesting, I guess, week to week, month to month.
Yeah, what happened during COVID is we had, so first of all, we're in the Grove. We're walking distance away from a bunch of cool places, coffee places, bars, lunch places, right? And has a nice little character, that'll be one,
Okay.
Where it's different, the environment. But two would be that during COVID, we had 3 floors, and then we subleased it because we didn't need all 14,000 square feet anymore because everyone was working remote. So now we have an eclectic group of startups in there, from, entertainment law firm to a VC, a SPACing company, micromobility company, and a PR agency. So you get a really neat group of people in and out of that door, and pit bulls walking through the halls, and everyone's like, "What the heck's pit bull?" Oh, it's because he's meeting with a VC upstairs, right? And DJI, and then someone will hold a party, there for a night, and then invite you, and so it's really neat, to that kind of environment, and
Free
it's
PR.
entertaining.
Free PR
I'll say
right
it's
there.
entertaining. Yeah,
Right.
free PR, exactly. So I would say that's one, and then from a Taxfyle standpoint, we have a ping pong table. We have a good auditorium there. It's like not really stadium seating, but kind of like stadium seating with a big TV, and we had a watch party for the NFL draft for people that like sports and things like that. So we try to keep it light.
The only thing missing is a podcast studio, right?
I know I'm dying for a podcast.
We were a little closer. We could throw a pop-up shrimp tank in there, but we're a little too far for that. So we're going to take a quick commercial break. Hear from our sponsors when we get back. Jump to our Plead the Fifth segment of the show.
Are you ready to make your indelible impression? DeRay & Company is an award-winning, full-service public relations and marketing agency with offices in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and Aspen, Colorado. With practice areas in business, real estate, cannabis, nonprofit, legal, and lifestyle, DeRay & Company is fully equipped to help clients reach their goals with strategies that are on point. Whether it's public relations, social media, digital marketing, content development, or other services, DeRay & Company delivers results for business owners that address their business goals and reach their targeted audience. To learn more about DeRay & Company and our services, visit DeRayandCompany.com. DeRayandCompany.com.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Shrimp Tank. Ricky, on this segment, it is called Plead the Fifth. So you have to answer these questions, or if you do not want to, you get one chance to say, I plead the fifth, and you don't have to answer it. So we were just listening to a commercial about PR. So I guess let's go into that topic for a moment. What are, let's say, the biggest nightmares that you've ran into where you've had to hire a PR agency to kind of help support, your brand? Has that come up?
Yeah, in the early days, we've probably gone through like 3 PR companies.
Okay.
That's not too bad.
It's not too bad, right?
We've had people that are approaching the dozen mark.
Luckily, we like the one that
They're
we landed
really
on right
good
now.
at kind of selling their services, but oftentimes not as good at selling yours. So that can be a problem,
Yeah, I think, Kevin, I've been trying to solve that, and figure that out and reconcile all the issues there. And I think what it is that, unlike Google AdWords, the feedback loop on PR is a lot more kind of ambiguous and gray, right? So the initial jolt that you get, let's say you get published on TechCrunch or something like that, it's mainly going to be employee morale, right? Employee morale, and then something you can put on your website that your sales team could then use as a social validator, right, to whoever they're pitching to. I don't see that you're going to get much back from that, and saying, hey, I want to buy your services, right? So how do you quantify that? And then how do you quantify that along the roadmap of where you are in a company, right? Like how important is that in the really early days, right? Is that used really for raising capital? Can you use it for raising capital, right? So it has to be, I think when you engage a PR firm, it's got to be strategic. You got to go into the mission. You're like, all right, I'm not doing this to get 1 million users, right? I'm doing this to build a brand, and that brand is going to be used to support my sales team. And then when I go with my pitch deck out, I have some nice references there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a fair approach, but it's so much nicer to look at, digital and ads, and where you can say, okay, exactly where did this user come from, how much did they cost, and your ROI is very clear.
That's a catch-22, man. You could burn a pile of money just doing that.
Oh, absolutely.
But you'll be going like that.
But you'll get the facts on where it went and why. You'll get the
you'll get the facts if your software is set up correctly in terms of tracking. We forgot that, and we had a big spend that just went out, and then boom, it's gone. We made our fair share of mistakes along the road.
So I was going to ask a question about any kind of nightmare-related stuff too, but on the liability side, is there anything that still kind of keeps you up, or is the legal buttoned up where, hey, you're just the marketplace, you aren't really responsible for, if somebody does something, because you are in a regulatory space where, you can get in trouble, legal trouble, for doing certain things right or wrong, or, not paying and this and that. So what is your position?
Yeah, I cackled there. I was like, why did I cackle? That's not funny. But it's different. Look, again, one of the lucky parts here that I think is an asset for this industry to be on a marketplace like Taxfyle. Comes back to the fact that on every single tax return, if it's prepared by a CPA or IRS enrolled agent, they got to sign themselves with their own license, along with you if they're representing you or whatever, right? So that's like almost a contract there, right? The CPA files on their behalf, right? It's not Taxfyle, right? Like because the thing is, Taxfyle isn't going in there saying, all right, what do you take as a deduction, right? And then at the end of the job, the CPA that went in there to determine which are a lot of deductions or not is signing off next to the individual on the return with a signature and the 8879, which is a form that if you're hiring someone else to do. So it's kind of been industry standard, obviously, because we have 45,000 CPA firms in the United States, right? That people are going to hand off their work to someone else. And then the IRS has established a way over the past few decades of establishing, hey, okay, well, this is the liability from these guys, right? So luckily for us, as a connector, we haven't really seen that over the past 6 years, Yeah. And since it is a professional workforce, it's not really like the, commoditizable Uber Eats, Uber drivers, stuff like that, unions and that type of work. There's usually carve-outs for professionals when it comes to like gig economies, and even at the state level, California even carves out professionals, right? So luckily for us, we just so happen to jump into a field that is professional, but unlike legal, right? There's not, it's been well established. How to say it? It's been a well established.
About the history, but that makes
like
a lot
large
of sense.
CPA firms have been using independent contractors for decades, right? So we've we do the same thing just with 21st century technology, essentially.
Well, give us an example where you had to fire CPA from your platform, right? They try to steal a client, do some stuff outside of your platform. They did a horrible job, and a client, obviously they're leaving a review on your platform. Tell us an example where you had to fire someone or multiple people.
Yeah, I mean, when you're doing tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of forms and schedules a year, you're going to run into that, right?
Well, give us the craziest story.
The craziest story. Well, we don't see a lot of people stealing clients because, they join the platform to make money, and if that gets caught, via...
And what is your cut? I don't think we had...
I was just going to ask about that. It must be a pretty good deal for the accountants, unlike some of the platforms out there that you can read up on where, the platform really makes all the money, and it's usually pseudo-professional stuff, though. So, like, anyone can jump on, but the platform really rakes in all the cash. That must not be the case, or you wouldn't have so many accountants.
It depends. So, is it an $80 job, or is it like a $5,000 $10,000 4-month engagement, right? So
okay, so it's not a standard 20%.
That's right. The algorithm kind of
top.
determines, so they can make up to 70% of an engagement if they want to, right? Like, so it depends. And it also depends on how much work they have on their plate, right? Which would determine that, because, we don't want people just grabbing jobs, right? You got to cap them out. So you cap them out at a certain amount of work.
Okay, so it's pretty sophisticated.
Yeah, the algorithm handles all that.
I thought you were going to say a clean 20-30%. Call it a day.
No.
Based on the size.
No, that's tough to do.
Yeah.
And like I said, that's what we want to engage Twilio for. Because what we realized in the early days, you couldn't just do a clean 20-30% if you want to do more complex work. You had to really incentivize the marketplace, and then you had to take the cut for the harder engagements to get, right? If you got a $10,000 client, well, that wasn't just a Google ad spend, right? There's some sales behind that, right? So, that's all kind of factored in.
So do we have a story?
So back to the crazy story. Yeah, we
give us
derailed you there.
the worst story.
Yeah,
where you had to kick someone off.
Yeah, kick someone off. Usually they're unresponsive. Those are the worst ones. I hate those. Where it comes down to the deadline and
Ooh, yeah, taxing, that's bad.
Yeah.
Penalties.
Yeah, well, no. It's worse than that. So they actually filed, but they didn't tell the client that they filed, right, on the app. So you see that a lot, and the pros trying to get through their jobs, and maybe they have a W-2, and hey, I filed it. I'll tell you about it tomorrow, but you're up against a deadline, and the client is kind of nervous about it, like where is it?
Of
Did I
course.
file and stuff like that, right? And the pro doesn't care because they, in this case, the pro didn't care, and you got to kick them off. You got to kick them off, and if we have a 2-strike policy, right? So like I said, we're doing hundreds of thousands, and if this is a pro that has perfect 5-star rating or 4.8 and has done 1,000 jobs to date,
Of course.
Okay, fine. What
This
happened
is always
here
going to
is
be.
like,
the-
I
the-
forgot
the
to hit send,
customer.
or something.
There's
like
also
that.
been the customer that loves complaining, right? It goes that direction as well.
Well, that's again negatively connotative space. They're all going to complain. They all think they should have gotten more of a refund than they actually did, and you're just going to be like, look, we're not going to, or the pro has to be like, hey, I can't. I'm not going to take that position. It's way too aggressive.
Okay, you have 2 business partners. What's your biggest pet peeve of each of them? Oh, here we go.
All right. Who's the fifth?
Yeah, he didn't say it yet. He's still thinking. He's thinking.
I plead the fifth.
Yeah, we got him.
All right, now we ask all the hard questions. I only really have one more. You mentioned having some real serious discussions about the business plan, the future, walking away from what sounds was probably a pretty good job and some nice benefits.
Yeah, for sure.
So, what did you guys decide? What is the end goal? Is it IPO? Is it massive exit? Is it just build? What's the game plan for the future of Taxfyle?
Well, we definitely think we can IPO. We think that the business model is appealing to the public market, and our trajectory in this next round would set us up nicely for that. So from a KPI standpoint, we think definitely we could IPO. But look, I mean, we've been in this process for 6 years. If the right offer comes along, we've gotten offers. They haven't been the right ones. So,
all right,
but they're all considered. And I think that. You have, like I mentioned earlier, a fiduciary duty to your investors and who got in when. And anytime we get those calls, we always run it by everyone. And if we feel we could keep it going, which obviously we do, and we think we could do it at speed, then we will.
all right, fair enough.
Well, Ricky, thanks for joining us on the Shrimp Tank today. For our audience listening, if they want to get in touch with you guys, what's the best route?
Taxfyle.com. And just go to Taxfyle.com. You can see all the different services that we do there, and reach out if you have any questions.
Awesome. Thanks again for joining us. We'll be back Thursday at 4 p.m. Take care, everybody.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank. When it take a swim, only option is to win. In the murky water, not a